the gap between the train and the platform.
We're here in South London towards the end of the Northern Line, in an area called Tooting. I grew up in this area, and I know the area very well. However, after hearing news from multiple sources that the area has become unrecognisable due to recent changes, I decided to come and check it out for myself. I thought I knew this area well, but things aren't exactly how they used to be, and this doesn't feel like the area in which I grew up in.
Tooting was recently named by Lonely Planet as one of the top 10 coolest neighbourhoods in the world, and this has taken people by storm.
This achievement has been celebrated by some, but hated by a large fraction of the local population.
What makes Tooting such an intriguing case is that on the surface, it is a multicultural suburb in which different ethnic communities coexist in harmony, but with gentrification acting as a driver of social and racial tensions, with distressed ethnic communities caught up in the middle, this harmony is at serious risk. In order to uncover the truth and the severity of the situation,
I decided to speak to the locals myself.
Pardon me? Tooting? You know what I mean? When did this happen? You know what? It's all changing. Central London is changing.
but why is that a problem?
Because it's a problem because the people who built the communities can't afford to stay in the communities anymore.
We are currently in Zone 1 in central London. This is Oxford Street, a popular tourist destination. You might have also heard of other popular places such as Westminster, Camden, Kensington, Shoreditch and even Clapham. But a few years ago, you probably would have never heard of Tooting. I decided to take the Northern Line to Tooting Broadway Station to find out more and talk to the locals to understand how exactly their neighbourhood is changing and how their lives are affected.
Yeah, my name's John. I'm the co-owner of the Bubble Waffle Shop in Tooting Market.
How long have you been in the area for?
30 years. It's changed for the better. It's been more gentrified. So yeah, we've had a change in clientele with the people that was living here once. Before it was all butchers and jewellery shops, but now it's more turning into restaurants. It's good. It's beneficial for everyone.
When I first moved here, it was quite quiet. So really, Tooting wasn't on the map, so to speak. But now, over the years, it's changed and like everyone knows Tooting.
I grew up in Tooting from the age of 3 years old, and just seeing the contrast of what it was like from when I was younger to now, there's a massive change. So I have kind of two different experiences in terms of age and also in terms of living there then and living there again now. So it's crazy.
So I remember going there when there wasn't really much there apart from just the market and the Primark. And then going there now and there's all the new restaurants that are open. Just a real difference of the people that now live there, and the community is a bit different as well. Change the look of the place.
They've come out of nowhere.
Yeah, they have actually come out of nowhere, yeah.
Tooting was never as popular as it is today. Back in the 1990s and 2000s, places in South London such as Tooting and Brixton were considered rough and violent areas. Since 2013, Tooting has seen rapid change. Many locals consider it unrecognisable. Tooting has a long-established South Asian population and is famous for its numerous curry houses which lines the main high street, along with sari and jewellery stores. In recent times, Tooting has seen a rise in the number of hipster and artisan coffee shops, bars and art spaces. How did such an ordinary town in the suburbs of London become so famous?
We're here in the heart of London at UCL in Bloomsbury. to interview leading urban geographer Andrew Harris in order to gain a further insight into the origins of gentrification. Tooting wasn't the first neighbourhood in London to be affected by gentrification. From today's interview, we will gain a better understanding about the academic origins of the word gentrification.
Gentrification was a term that was first coined by the urban sociologist Ruth Glass, director of the Centre for Urban Studies here at University College London. She used it in the introduction to the 1964 book London Aspects of Change. Middle class groups were, to use Ruth Glass's phrase, invading shabby, modest mews and cottages, particularly in areas of North London. So I think this is very much the founding text for gentrification. Firstly, it's important to note that this is a process of class-based urban change. So Ruth Glass was referring to areas of London that previously were largely working class, that was seeing this new influx of middle class group. I think secondly, gentrification involves forms of displacement. So it's actually a process that has losers. It's got its winners, of course, but always there are people that are often directly or indirectly moved on.
You know, in 1964, when Ruth Glass coined the term gentrification from this very spot at UCL, she really was ahead of her time to be able to predict the changes that are occurring today in London. What a privilege it is to be able to investigate the effects of gentrification as a UCL alumni. There's one thing which Andrew Harris said that really got me thinking. There are winners and losers in this process. However, who are the losers and who are the winners?
Before investigating gentrification in London today, let's go back 20 to 30 years to see what was happening back then. According to the Financial Times, neighbourhoods in Hackney, such as London Fields and Dalston, which were not as sought after in 1996, house prices on average were just over £75,000. This figure reached £600,000 in 2016. Even though throughout this period house prices were rising in London, 400% as a whole, and only 290% in England and Wales in that time, Hackney's increase was 700%. It's also important to look at the rent prices too, as poorer families will not be able to maintain higher rents, leading them to move out of the area. Where do they go? Many are forced to move out to outer suburbs where rents are more affordable. Let's now focus on South London, where Tooting is. People are moving further and further south in search for more affordable rent, especially young adults who need access to central London. This means it's Tooting's turn to gentrify. Average prices of homes in Tooting is £570,000 compared to £720,000 in Balham and £752,000 in Clapham, according to land registry data. Before heading out to speak to locals in Tooting, I decided to catch up with my cousin to see how gentrification is affecting members of my own family.
My neighbours, they're wanting to move further out, and the blend of this road that used to be like quite multicultural is phasing out. It's losing the identity. I'm a Sri Lankan Tamil, although I was born and raised in England. Gripping onto that identity was instilled by my parents. Raising my own children that way, I don't want them to lose their heritage, and that's really important. When the areas are changing predominantly, so does like the identity that was once here.
My cousin spoke about the importance of multiculturalism, heritage and identity. It's useful for us to analyse the distribution of ethnic groups in London. This is important because it reveals who is being affected by gentrification. This map shows the second most spoken languages that people speak in the area. after English. Each colour represents a different language, and immediately you notice that Tower Hamlets, next to Hackney, the borough that I mentioned earlier, is highlighted in orange, which shows the high proportion of the Bengali community which live there. But moving down to South London, you notice the pink. The pink shows Tamil, which is my ethnicity, and it comes at no surprise that I also live in this area too. There are many reasons for ethnic clustering. Research has shown ethnic communities feel safer amongst their own.
But then the more we surround ourselves with an environment where you're not exposed to that multicultural background, the more we naturally forget as well, I think. So we forget our own background because we're so busy with the whole work life, the mum life. Tend to forget to rein ourselves back and think, well, there's the cultural aspect in certain things that we do, how we fasted, how we've began, and you can just talk to your neighbours about that, you know. And now it's like you have to explain yourself to your new neighbours about your own identity, and it's just an explanation. Some people are very interested in that, other people are just like, well, you're in England.
Having grown up in a council estate in Mitcham, my family and I later moved to Thornton Heath. The place in which I grew up isn't exactly filled with the best memories, as it was a very rough area to grow up in. But I wanted to go back to revisit the past, to see how the area has changed, and also visit my childhood friend, who I haven't seen in over 15 years. I figured he might have some information as to how life has changed here. There's lots of gang-on-gang rivalry, postcode rivalry as they call it. Gangs have a certain attachment to postcodes. They have an attachment to the estate in which they're from. When you've got a gang from another estate, so I know that there's the red brick estate further down in Mitcham, and there was very violent problems between the two. I think growing up in these kind of environments, you're kind of caught in between that, and you know, growing up, you would hear stories of murders, stabbings just down the street. There is a population living on the poverty line, struggling to get by. You know, they're living paycheck to paycheck. And it's in places like these in which these populations live. One of the friends who grew up with me in the opposite block is now in jail. And that news really came as a shock. He's now in jail for selling drugs. I thought, coming back here, I can reconnect with him. But I've just found out from a friend that he's in jail. That's the harsh reality of living in a place like this. I visited the local library to research the history of Tooting. Back in the 18th century, Tooting was just a small village surrounded by fields. It wasn't all peace and quiet though. One story really disturbed me. In the mid-19th century, Tooting saw one of the worst cholera outbreaks, which also broke out in a care home for pauper children, orphans with no means of support. In 1849, the institution kept the children in horrific conditions. What really shocked me about the story was that Charles Dickens was aware of the conditions, but any inquests were ignored for so long by the Surrey coroner, until it was finally brought into public attention after the deaths of so many children. In disgust, Edgar Johnson referred to Tooting as a stain upon a civilised land. Charles Dickens actually wrote a paper about the incident, ironically named The Paradise at Tooting. Today, Tooting is also being described as a paradise for tourists, which I think is pretty ironic. 200 years ago, Tooting was in the spotlight, but the government was completely unaware to the problems that had been taking place in Tooting. In a similar sense, the government is unaware of the rising ethnic tensions on the streets of Tooting. My family's favourite restaurant is located in Tooting, and we've been going here since the late 90s. I decided to catch up with Rizwan Ali, who runs Lahore Karahi, and other business owners in and around Tooting Market.
I started in here in 1999.
Okay, it's a very long time.
I know Tooting very well.
Yeah.
You have every type, race, colour in this little town. I mean, you've got people, lovely atmosphere. You can practice your religion in here.
Yeah, and language.
Language,
There's
yeah.
the beautiful Amman temple, which used to be just there.
Exactly. You got different communities, all the religions mixed up together. I mean, it's lovely.
Tooting might be a diverse place today, but life as an ethnic minority 50 years ago was very different.
I arrived in Tooting 1969. Obviously at a very young age, I was 9, nearly 10. Yeah, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Yeah. Time you reach the age of 12, you think, hold a minute, what's this? You know what I mean? No black, no Irish, no dogs.
And you saw that in Tooting?
And that was in Tooting.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw those signs in Tooting on my road, where I used to live. Them kind of areas you couldn't even really go as a black man.
If you go there, you will see life in there. You got pizza places, you got the pubs, you got the club there. Everything is there.
Yeah.
So basically, Tooting, I would say I'm living in Pakistan. Honestly, I'm living in Pakistan.
Amazing.
You got very similar
Yeah.
markets and the atmosphere, the people, the color.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything even better than that.
They leaflet dropped in the West Indies for people to come and help them to not only clean up the country, but prior to all of that, there was blacks and Indians fighting in the First and Second World War for Britain. But you know what? They won't teach that in the school, because they won't give you the power. Back some of the power to the people who actually came and helped. There's no such thing as a postcode as it is now, as it is significant to a lot of the youth now. We could go anywhere. South London was South London. But as I say, as the years have gone by, Tooting itself has changed significantly. Fast forward to today, it's becoming very gentrified in the sense that the people who you see in Tooting roaming around and looking at you as if you shouldn't be here, they don't even know their way to the station. It's those people from across the water, had the big houses, who probably can't afford to live in those big houses anymore. Then they look in this side of the water, right, in the suburbs, seeing how nice the houses are, how good access they have to central London and so forth, and are moving in. And as they move in, the people in Tooting move out.
Hanging out in the areas, it wasn't, I use the word sterile, but that's the most, probably a very un-PC way of saying it. When I mean sterile, it's not a very washed area. It was very raw, it was very homely, it felt comfortable.
Propaganda. I think when the government and the council want to get rid of, I'm not going to be rude, but I'm going to say black people to get their houses, they made up this propaganda. Brixton is violent, Brixton is move your kids. But they never told them that if you live in Brixton or you live near the tube station or the train station, your house is going to go sky high. They never told people that. People have kind of keep going outwards, so it's going to cause some conflict. So, the government changes the rules for them to be successful, for them to be successful, not for us to be successful. We're the one that's still doing all this hard work. And made sure got rid of all the people that would resist it in Brixton. I mean, I'm from Brixton, but they got rid of all the people that would resist it. Got the police to get rid of them. And then when they got rid of those people, then they just worked on the fears of the elder generation. And the elder generation obviously love their children and they want the best for their children, so they listen to the government. But the government and the councillors, they're terrible. They're terrible. They really let the people down in Brixton, I feel. So it's a dangerous scenario. And, I use the word ethnic cleansing because people have to know what is going on. This isn't just a couple of people coming and buying houses. These are people buying houses, starting business, changing up the whole dynamics of the area.
Speaking to this business owner opened my eyes to the tensions and distress that various ethnic communities are facing. There is also tensions with the police and government authorities. These tensions led to the Brixton riots that we all know too well, and I'm worried that tensions are also building now underneath the surface.
Well, from what I've gathered from some of the people who have had stores in the market for longer, I think their opinion of how it has changed would be different to how my opinion would be. It's moved from being a standard general kind of market to very, very similar to kind of Brixton market, which works because there is a demand for that now, and having a similar one here in Tooting is great for the area and for the market. But I'd say for smaller businesses that have been here longer, they may be getting phased out a little bit. Then there's other businesses coming in and and thriving because of the new atmosphere of this market. So it's difficult really to say whether it's a good or bad thing. It's good for some, not good for others.
I had the opportunity to interview Roy, the man who runs Tooting Market. I wanted to ask him about his vision for the market's future.
We've looked out for better traders, we looked out for better businesses. We got rid of the traders and the businesses that weren't part of the vision and the plan. Well, the vision was always to bring this market up to a new standard, to introduce independent businesses, cool and quirky businesses, artisan businesses. It was never about selling out the roots of Tooting or Tooting Market. It was never about that. If you do not support these businesses, they're dead. You know, retail is basically almost dead. You find these original businesses that have been here, you know, the grocer, the Caribbean grocer, she's been here for years, the haberdashery shop, the Asian tailor, the butcher. Look, they're all still here. We built this new vision around them, and now we have a healthy mix of new traders and old traders, and everybody kind of just feeds off everybody.
Right, because this is my stomping ground. I used to run through this market with my mates. I used to pull my mum's trolley in this market as a youth, standing up waiting for her to finish talking to all her mates. When the people who are coming in now, they don't see you because they're coming to eat and drink. Because of the gentrification, most markets, just like Tooting Market, has become somewhere to socialise. You know what I'm saying? They don't cook in their own houses. In fact, most of them can't bloody cook anyway. They're processed people. I call them the processed people, right? Processed food, packaged food, put it in a microwave, that's it. I'm not saying everybody, the vast majority, that's how they live. Someone like myself and a couple of the other businesses in the market are just invisible to them, you know? There's a higher volume of people coming in the market, but then my business was better before they came, because the people who used to shop at the shops that used to be in here don't come anymore. They don't see themselves here anymore. Where's such and so? Where's so and so? Sorry, they're not here anymore. Oh, well, there's no point in me coming in here because there's nothing in it that I want. Yeah, so I now have to reinvent myself to suit the people that are actually coming in here. Things change, and change is great, change is good, but who is it good for? You know what I mean? It's not always good for everybody.
What's my opinion? Well, I believe it's more like ethnic cleansing. That what they're doing, whether they realise it or not, is pushing out all the little people that need to be in the market to start a business and earn a living. I don't think they want us in the market, to be quite honest with you. I think they want more European people. I don't think it's a natural process. Take a look around and you see it's not a natural process. It's not a natural process. The people of colour in here, they're pushing them to the back, or they had to leave because they can't afford the rent. But they're trying to put me at the back of the market. You know, they're trying to put me at the back of the market so that I've got to close at 7 o'clock. When I'm here, you can close at 12. But at the back, do you know what I mean? They're going to shut it at 7 o'clock, and then they're going to put my rent up. So how they expect me to? And what about my customers? Well, I'm very negative at the moment because they're trying to push me out. In December, instead of renewing my lease, I pay my rent on time, I do everything on time. So I don't know why they won't renew my lease. I just think this place is slowly not becoming my home. I grew up down there, Tooting Grove I grew up.
As I was editing this documentary, I received a phone call from one of my interviewees, who expressed that she felt scared to be included. I wanted to honour her request. I can't mention too many details, but what I can mention is that this interviewee experienced sexual harassment and racial abuse from her landlord.
Morning, London. It's a beautiful day outside. It's a little bit chilly.
The next station is Aldgate. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
This morning, we're getting ready with my mother to go to the local temple.
our local Hindu temple had to shut down. I'm just doing some research into why it had to shut down. I'm feeling really emotional because that temple meant so much to me, and not only me, but kind of so many people in the Tamil and also Hindu community. The opening of a new hotel and the new student accommodation will have a positive effect on other businesses in the area and make a good contribution to the ongoing efforts to revitalise and regenerate Tooting town centre. Like there's no mention of an entire community who are heartbroken, so they were forcefully evicted from the site. That's what the article says. They prevented worshippers from entering and removed 16 gold and gem encrusted statues of gods. The court had ordered to pay $180,000 in rent arrears dating back to 2008. So the temple trustees continued to dispute this debt. I can't believe what I'm reading. It is the way they would have treated criminals. Look at this. Meat eaters are not permitted entry into the temple area. This notwithstanding, high-handed enforcement officers who are beef eaters have violated the sanctity of the temple by trampling the area of the shrines with their booted feet. Wow, so the landlords wanted to redevelop the block, and they were told in 2009 that they would not be renewing their lease. Are you aware that Tooting Amman Coil is closed and people have lost their site of worship?
It's quite shocking to learn that the Amman Coil is that's really, because as a young child I remember there was very limited temples around, and we travelled to Tooting Amman Coil and just and go there and do that. So that's basically a part of my childhood that's just been stripped, really. That memory, that's all it is, isn't it now?
When people drive through Tooting or stay in Tooting, they won't know what used to be there.
Just a distant memory of our heritage that we try to preserve in another country that's foreign to us.
Like it's just forever kind of hidden in history. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this documentary, is that I wanted my documentary to make a mark, like a little stamp in history. Even after thorough research, there just wasn't enough information online. I couldn't quite get the full story, and the temple did dispute the rent arrears. I just knew I needed to get more information somehow. I later found out that after the temple was shut down, it had relocated to a neighbouring town. And so I went to speak to the founder of the temple itself. என்ன காரணத்துக்கு அந்த கோயில் வந்து பூட்டினது?
அந்த கோயில் வந்து நாங்கள் லீஸ் ஹோல் ப்ராப்பர்ட்டியை தான் பண்ணது. அதாவது லீஸ் 15 வருஷத்துக்கு லீஸ். இப்போ நாங்கள் அதை எப்படியும் விடத்தான் பண்ணோம்.
அந்த லீஸை திருப்பி ரினியூ பண்ணுறதுக்கு
ரினியூ பண்ண கேட்டான், அல்லது ஃப்ரீ ஹோல்டாக பண்ணுறதுக்கும் கேட்டான், மாட்டான்ட்டார்.
ஒரு கோயில் நடத்துறதுக்கு என்ன கஷ்டங்கள், என்ன வித்தியாசம் இருக்குது?
ஊரில் பார்த்தீங்களன்னு சொன்னால் அந்த கோயிலுக்குரிய இடத்தை தர்ம சாதனமாக கொடுத்துருப்பாங்க, அதாவது ஃப்ரீயாக கொடுத்துருப்பாங்க. அடுத்தது வந்து அந்த ஆலயத்தை கட்டுறதுக்கு ஊர் மக்கள் எல்லாரும் சேர்ந்து ஒரு ஒத்துழைப்பு இருந்திருக்கும். அந்த சமுதாயத்தின் ஒத்துழைப்புனால அதுகளெல்லாம் அங்கே செய்கிறது இலகுவாக இருந்திருக்கும். அதுபோக மின்சார கட்டணம் கூட அந்த நாட்டு அரசாங்கம் ஆலயத்துக்கு கண்டால் அதுக்கு கட்டணம் வர வருவதில்லை. தண்ணி வந்து கிணறு, உங்களுக்கு தெரியும், கிணறு தோண்டினால் அந்த கிணத்துலேருந்து தண்ணி எடுத்துக்கொள்ளலாம். ஆனால் வெளிநாட்டு ஐரோப்பா பொறுத்த மட்டும் இங்கே எதை தொட்டாலும் காசு தான். இப்போ ஒரு குப்பையை கொண்டு எறிகிறதுன்றாலும் காசு தான். காசு கொடுத்து தான் குப்பையை பண்ணுறோம், காசு கொடுத்து தான் குப்பையை நுறைய வேணும்.
நீங்கள் நினைக்கிறீங்களா ஒரு கோயில் நடக்கிறதுக்கு இன்னும் கஷ்டமாக இருக்க போகுது?
நிச்சயமாக சிரமமாக தான் இருக்கும். ஏனென்று சொன்னால் அந்த கோயிலுக்கு வரக்கூடிய ஆக்கள் அந்த இடத்துல அவை இல்லாமல் போயிருக்குள்ள அவைகளுடைய ஒத்துழைப்புங்களுக்கு குறைவாக தான் இருக்கும்.
After speaking to the founder and spiritual leader of the Tooting temple, I realised the main reason for the temple shutting down was the renewal of the lease. But as I left the temple, I bumped into Jayapalan. He revealed something quite unsettling about the effects of the war back home in Sri Lanka.
அவரினா எங்கே போச்சு அந்த காசு? most of the money, income, விடுதலை போராட்டத்திൻ്റെ பாதிப்பாளர்களுக்கு நிறைய போனது.
As the civil war was intensifying in Sri Lanka in 2009, innocent civilians were losing their lives and desperately needed foreign aid. The temple couldn't just stand by and watch, and donated money to help families back home. But the financial pressure really hit hard, coupled with the fact that it started to receive fewer and fewer donations from the wider community as a result of gentrification.
According to the UN, up to 40, possibly 70,000 civilians were killed, the majority by government forces. Up to 40, possibly 70,000 civilians.
As my hometown of Tooting changes, it makes me wonder, where exactly do I call home? Am I a global citizen of this world? Or do I belong somewhere to a specific place and country? Where exactly do I belong? Not only were we displaced from our home country of Sri Lanka, I now feel like I'm being displaced from my home of Tooting.
Up to 40, possibly 70,000 civilians.
The modern world raises some really difficult questions. Who are we and where do we fit in? How do we define our identities? And what makes us, us? When a racist looks at the colour of your skin and shouts at you, "Go back to where you came from," what do they mean by that? I hope you now understand why community, language and religion is so important to me, because that's the only reminder of home that I have. The question of where we belong is only made harder when you have no stationary sense of place. The most difficult question I get asked in my life is, where are you from?
Possibly 70,000.
Address human rights violations and accountability.
On Monday, the UN said there's credible evidence that war crimes were committed.
They're not going to crumble tomorrow. We're going to have to hold our nerve.
She cannot pay the rent without claiming universal credit. Her girls are not just two more in the 130,000 children in this country in temporary accommodation.
Prime Minister! Having heard everyone's stories in this documentary, I started to feel really hopeless. I decided to reach out to MP Siobhan McDonough to discover what the government can do about the situation.
Except if you think about, though, in a longer term, the Hindu temple arrived because the co-op department store closed. Irish communities or English Londoner communities, the Afro-Caribbean communities who have been in Tooting before Asian wave of residents felt they lost something when it became a Hindu temple. London is so dynamic is that there are numerous ways of this. People come and they go and they bring their mark, and when every new community comes out, the community that's in a state of flux feels loss. We can rage at our loss, but sometimes our loss isn't within the scope or power of government immediately. It's just about change.
Well, what can be done? The people that are coming in should, really respect the people that have been here. They can learn from the people that's been here, and the government as well need to acknowledge the people that they're governing. So it all goes back to the government. It all goes back to the government.
Annoyed.
Yeah, really annoyed.
Because even if I could afford to stay in Tooting and raise my children, they'll have a very different experience for me. Because Tooting's a part of me and it's made me who I am. I went to school in Tooting as well. I went to nursery in Tooting. I went to everything in Tooting, nothing out of Tooting until my adult life when I went to university.
When you consider these were the areas where kind of, working class people did used to congregate, it's annoying now that people that have more money are now coming there and making it, their own instead of when it was, our own.
Yeah, because it's almost like flat pack housing, or all at the same. There'll be no character. There's no character left. That's what makes different towns and cities unique, is the character, and that's what makes the fabric of these towns and these cities and these neighbourhoods.
I like some parts of it, I have to be completely honest, but at the same time I know that if it doesn't get kind of frozen at the stage it's at now, then it will go too far. And there is a moment, I think, maybe people would disagree, but there's a moment when it works to kind of push it a little bit and to mix it up a little bit. Basically the market is in the daytime a very white space, and then in the evening it sometimes gets a bit more interesting, a bit more mixed, but it just feels not so much that it's just about perhaps class and race, but also about families. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not what I thought of the market for in the past. It was much more kind of young person space, or a much more general space where everybody was doing their shopping.
I think it's about an area that's organically changing. You could argue that it's the government in that if you built more houses, there wouldn't be the same demand, and so there wouldn't be the same price rise. Perhaps there wouldn't be the same movement. People wouldn't be moving out or moving in.
Having spoken to so many residents, I just felt a little lost. I felt hopeless, just like so many other residents. I called up my friend in Singapore, who is a master's student in urban spatial analytics. She revealed how London could learn a thing or two from Singapore's experience in urban planning.
But the practical argument is that we don't have space to retain this kind of thing. So I think here really architecture comes into place to see whether we can preserve this kind of structural elements that help keep the memory alive, but at the same time also allow for new buildings to grow. So in London's context, you really need both the residents as well as people from the council to sit down at the same table and talk about what is it that they want to preserve in this neighbourhood. But I think one of the main things that they can take away from Singapore is this kind of conviction that it is your responsibility to house people. So one thing that Singapore has is that if, let's say, the public housing estates are running out their lease, definitely the residents will have a say to vote. They have a vote to say like whether they want to sell this block back to the government or like back to a private developer. So something like that, like having a say would help.
Are you liking it?
For me especially, it's really good. I live near the station, so as I come out, I've got everything. So I don't have to go very far to do my shopping or just to hang out, basically.
After the interview, Melissa was so kind enough to show me around the market herself, showing me all the things that she enjoys about the market, and why it's so important that she does have this close to her.
Apart from the bus, it's not cost effective when I'm using the cabs and all that kind of stuff. We do have a service called Dial a Ride. If I wanted to go somewhere tomorrow, I couldn't book like the day before.
Well, sorry for the difficult question, but
it's okay.
Do you feel like you're a part of the process?
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Don't know, as someone who comes from Southampton, came here for uni, you know, I've never lived in London, like the fact that I'm white probably has something to do with it as well, unfortunately. We're just part of the younger generation who come here and want specialty coffee and want these things, so that's why they come here, because we want it and we're kind of like taking over.
It was really refreshing to have this chat with this Tooting resident, because I realised that everyone really does have a sense of what's going on in Tooting. But, you know, residents are having to battle with feelings of guilt.
So I feel that gentrification has been a major part of the disconnection between the youth and the adults. We love you still, and we got you. As old as we got you, you know, don't ever think that we ain't got you, man. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes it's for you lot to try and reach out to us as well, but come together. Even with other generals from other ends, and try and come together and bring a unity so that we can try and lower the deaths of disease. We promote, like, you know, trying to stop, minimise the killings, the deaths of our youngsters. You know, trying to change certain narratives.
My hometown of Tooting is changing, and there's nothing I can do about it. I have to accept reality.
You could also complain that as a capital city we're becoming too successful. I mean, London hasn't always been a successful city. In the 1970s we were in a city on our knees and our population was fleeing. Today people want to live in London. You know, we're on the cusp of Brexit. We could easily be going in the opposite direction. It would be interesting to see if we leave the EU without a deal and London takes a huge hit, income declines, and therefore whether some of the areas that we now think gentrified might be going backwards. We live in uncertain times and we live in one of the most successful cities in the world, and that's great, but it brings with it consequences.
London is changing. How we deal with that change is up to us. My way of dealing with this change is by making this documentary, so that this film can forever document the lives of Tooting's forgotten. It's also a gift to my parents, who have had to deal with change and displacement their entire lives. There's one thing that we cannot deny. As a result of gentrification, the essence and characteristics and the history of Tooting is changing and will soon be forgotten. This documentary is dedicated to Tooting's forgotten.
This train terminates at Tooting Broadway via Bank.